So good morning. My name is Cecilia El-Haddad. I am the Associate Director of Adult Education and Literacy Data System Support, in case you didn't meet me during the last training. Um, and today, during today's training, we are going to be talking specifically about the students section of DAISI. So just some housekeeping items. If you have a question at any point during the training, feel free to type it into the chat. The same goes with any audio or visual issues you might be having, like if you're having trouble hearing me or you're not seeing the screen you think you should be seeing, and type a little message in the corner. Also, if you haven't done so already, please have your login information handy. And also, I wanted to note that this training will be recorded, and this time I'm actually not lying about that. It is currently recording. So let's go ahead and get started. So just a quick agenda for what we're going to go over today. We are going to go over how to add a student. We're going to explore the various tabs of the student page, help you figure out where you can find all the information you need. We're going to quickly review how to search for a student, and then we're going to do a quick student search practice. So again, make sure you have your login information handy. And then at the end, we will have time for a question and answer session. We're going to try to keep it focused to just the topic of today's training at first. But if you have any additional questions that I can help with after, I am happy to help you with those. Okay, perfect. So once you log into DAISI, you should come to a screen like this. In order to get started, just select the correct fiscal year, click on your program's name. And then you should come to a page like this. This is the students list search page, and we'll come back to this later, but we're going to start with how to add a new student. I'm going to enter the information of a student who I know is in here, just because I want you to see that as soon as you enter the social security name of a student who's already entered into DAISI, you should get this notification at the top telling you what the name of the student is and all of their other information, and also the fiscal year that they'll appear in. If you do that just for a name and a date of birth, it mightn't happen. So I just wanted to, yes, I can zoom in a little bit. Is that better? Okay. So if you enter just the name and date of birth of a student, you're probably not going to get that. So if you have a social security number for a student, make sure you enter that first, because that's the best way to prevent any duplicate students from being entered. If you do enter a duplicate student, then you can either contact a program administrator or the DAISI help desk to have that deleted. So I'm not going to go through the entire add student process. Most of it is pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I will say is that any of these fields that you see with a red asterisk next to them, those fields are required. So you do have to enter those in order to save the student. Once you have all of the student's information entered, you can press the submit button either at the top or at the bottom, and then that'll save the student for you. Great. So I'm going to go to the next step. So after you hit submit, it can be really easy to think like, oh, I'm done. I just entered the student. But that is not the case. Unfortunately, there are other fields on other pages within the student tab that are necessary to fill out. So after you're done entering all of this bio demo information, you're going to want to go to the status tab, because there are two mandatory fields here that you need to submit in order to prevent the student from being in an error status. So after you submit the student, you're going to want to enter the employment status and also the barriers to employment. Oftentimes when I get emails about the student is in an error state. I don't understand why. It's a lot of the time it's because one of these two fields or both are blank. Okay, and then it also something I wanted to mention on this page is if the student is a distance learner, you do not have to select this. The student will be categorized as a distance learner based on the classes that they're enrolled in. So you don't have to go through the trouble of putting distance, clicking this button every single student, especially since I know a lot of you are exclusively distance learning, so that would be really tedious. So don't go through that trouble. Next, I wanted to go to the test information tab. So this is where you're going to enter any pre or post tests that you have to add for the student. So you just click the add test button and then fill out the given information for the student and then click submit. I do want to note that you must enter a pre-test for every instructional category that a student is enrolled in. So another common misconception that I'm seeing is there will be a student that's in an ESL class and also an ABE or ASE class, and they'll have a pre-test in ABE, but not one for ESL. And so I'll get an email saying, why is a student in an error state? They have a pre-test. They need a pre-test for both categories. So they need one for ESL and ABE if that's what they're enrolled in. You can also add a constitution test here. And I've also been getting a lot of questions about how do you enter a GED or how do you enter a high set? So those are actually done exclusively through data matching now. So you don't have to enter those or worry about them at all. We're partnering with an organization called Turnkey that is separate from DAISI, and every day on the last business day of the month, that's when they do their data matching. And so your GED and high set scores should appear on this page by probably the first week of the month. And the last thing I wanted to mention on this page was the 120-day rule. So this rule is flexible now, so you can either turn it on or off for a given student. And so if you're experiencing some testing errors that are confusing because you know that a student had a test within 120 days of their enrollment in the new fiscal year, make sure you go back and check to make sure that this 120-day rule is on, and then see if those errors go away. So I wanted to also go over this pandemic section that appears at the bottom of the testing page. So it has a variety of information, and it shows up for students that were affected by the pandemic. So if a student wasn't affected by the pandemic, they haven't attended any classes during a pandemic-induced closure, as noted by a whitelist that we talked about last week, this section won't appear. I also should note that we haven't added any whitelists for this year, so this isn't going to appear for any students in fiscal year 2021 just yet. But once it does, you will see any missing test information, so whether or not the student is missing a pre or a post test. It'll show you the dates that the student attended during the pandemic, so that's what you'll see when you see start and end date, that's what that means. And then it'll tell you the area that was affected. So this could be anything from the state, just your region, just your program, or even just a building within your program. And it'll tell you the dates of the pandemic-induced closure as governed by the whitelist in a different part of DAISI. And another thing that I wanted to mention while we were here, just because I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and I want to make sure there's no confusion. A lot of people have been asking, what is the pandemic feature for? So what it's for is to help providers keep track of students who attended during the pandemic-induced closure, any student who attended or accrued attendance hours during that time wouldn't be included. And it's also to help us as an ICCB organization understand the impact of COVID-19 on providers. What it does not do is exempt providers from pre or post-testing students. And I don't say this because I don't understand the massive challenges you guys are facing with testing right now. I just want to be clear in that this does not exempt anyone from pre or post testing. And so I want to make sure that that's not falling off anybody's radar. So the next page is the class information page. So on the left side, you'll see the aggregate hour section. So that shows the attendance hours the student has accrued in each of the instructional categories. And then it'll also tell the aggregate attendance hours. So it'll add all of these up in this column and tell you how many contact hours the student has had, any assessment and attendance hours, etc. And then there's also this add miscellaneous contact hours section here. So a miscellaneous contact hour is a category of time when a student accrued or when they attended, but this type of contact hour does not go towards generation. So this could be something from an offsite tutor or anything like that. So it doesn't count towards generation. It could be like a learning computer lab type of thing, but it doesn't count towards generation. It'll also tell you any classes that a student is enrolled in currently. It'll tell you the name. If a student is in an error state or is missing a pre or post test, then you'll see the error and warning signs right over here in this box. You can also enroll a student in a new class straight from this screen by pressing the enroll button, and then you'll be able to add in all this information here. And it'll also tell you any information about any classes that the student has exited in the current fiscal year, and it'll tell you the exit code, the date, and the start date of the class and all that good information that would be useful. And next is the goals and achievements page. So right at the top here, you will see this career pathway field, and it has a red asterisk. So it's easy to assume that this is a mandatory field. And so this was a field that was mandatory in the past for all students. But ITCB is revisiting the need for that, for this information. And so as of right now, this information only has to be filled out for Bridge and IET students. So even though there's a red asterisk here, it looks like it might be mandatory. It will not put a student in an error state if you don't fill this out. You'll get a warning, but warnings do not prevent students from showing up on reports. So if you have any warnings on student profiles because their career pathway hasn't been filled out, then don't worry about that. It's not going to affect a student from showing up on your report. You can just go ahead and leave it blank, unless that student, again, is in a Bridge or an IET course. Another common question that I get about this field is, what if the student isn't earning the credential until the future? In that case, you can just put the future date of the credential earned. It'll let you go as far into the future as you want. You can choose May 1st. Well, it didn't let me do that because it wasn't. And then I'll just put test here. So it actually, yeah, it'll let you save even if the date is in the future. And then there's also these other fields. These aren't mandatory, but they're really good to keep track of just for your program's data so that you can track all of your successes in these areas. So you can track any educational, societal, economic, or parenting achievements that your students have earned. The next section is the students' notes section. So this is where you can keep track of any notes that you might want to keep track of for a student. So you just enter the date, enter any kind of note that you might want to remember for a student. Maybe if they are in need of a Chromebook or internet access, you can keep track of that here and then press submit. then underneath, under this history section, it'll give you a history of all of those notes. If you want to delete a note, you can just press this delete button here. Then there's the custom field section. This section is really helpful for any information that you want to track that isn't tracked in any of these other tabs that we just mentioned. So the way that you do that is you just type anything that you want into the box, press submit, and then it'll remain in that field until the next time that you come in and edit it. And these custom fields are edited, if you're an administrator, under the administration tabs in the utilities section. So that's where you can go and edit any of the custom fields that you want. And finally, I wanted to review the IELCE tab. So this is where you can add any student competencies. So you can go in and select the date, select the category. These are in order of the way that the students earned them. Select the competency name and then press add, and then it'll appear right under in the given section. You can also view any competencies that a student has already earned and delete them if that's necessary. So the next thing I wanted to go over, that's basically a quick rundown of the student page. You can click and go to the next student, or the previous student by these previous and next buttons at the top here. And now we're going to quickly review the search feature. And I just saw a question, is the IELCE civics field, is this a required field for all students? And the answer is no. It's only going to be for students that are funded by IELCE. So I believe that's in the classes section, actually. So you'll notice that he's enrolled in a class that is funded by IELCE money. So any class that is funded by that funding source, you'll have to enter the IELCE information for. Great, so now we're going to talk about the search section. Again, there is a YouTube video on the ICCB playlist of the ICSPS or ISCPC page that already talks about how to do a search. But very briefly, in order to conduct a search, just click the box next to the criteria that you want to search for. Then you can enter either all or just part of a student's name or the criteria. And you can click as many different criteria that you wish. And then in order to complete your search, you can press submit. And then you'll get a list of all of the students in that search that match your criteria. So this is a list of all of the males who have a last name beginning with D. Another feature that I didn't mention during the last training was this search result name feature. So if you notice that you're doing a search for a particular group of students a lot, and you're going to come back to this search in the future, you can click this box, type a name for the search. So I'll say last name D, and then you can click save. And it'll give you this error message. I think that's just a bug because it usually does let you search. Save the search. And then once you come back to this page, there's going to be this view previous search results field. And if you click on the drop-down menu, then you can find that search field again, click view, and it'll take you right back to those search results. And these will change over time. So if I were to add a different man with a last name that begins with D, he would also appear in this search. So that's pretty helpful. And then I wanted to also mention this Excel button. So if you want to save the results of a search in an Excel spreadsheet, you can press this Excel button and it'll download the spreadsheets from your browser. So this list search tool is really flexible, and I know that right now we're all still waiting for that custom reporting tool to be restored, and we're doing that as quickly as we can. But until then, this search tool can be a really helpful way to get a quick list or count of students that meet a particular criteria. So let's say you want to find a list of all students that are lacking a pretest. You can just click those two criteria, press submit, and then it'll give you that list. You can download an Excel spreadsheet of it, and then it'll give you just a quick glance at the students that you're looking for. You can also search for things such as the number of students who have accrued given a given number of attendance hours, and students that are in an error state. So it's just a really useful tool to get those quick lists and counts without using a report. So that is all I wanted to show you on DAISI. And the next thing we're going to do is actually spend some time playing around with it on your own. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and pull up your login information. And we're going to spend a few moments just going through this search practice. So in your own program, try to find out how many students at your program are in an error state, how many students at your program have more than 12 attendance hours, how many students are enrolled in a bridge course, and how many students lack a pretest. So go ahead and log in, and I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes to try to find this information. And then we'll go back and review how you can find it using the search feature that I just went over. Great, so that is our time. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to come back to DAISI and review just briefly how to complete those searches. Great, so the first search was, I can just come under here. So the first search was how many students at your program are in an error state. And you should be able to find that out by going to the advanced search feature, student error status, and then click overall error state, yes. And then that should give you a list of students in an error state there. And of course, this is a demo site, so I don't have any students in an error state. How many students at your program have more than 12 attendance hours? You can find that by, again, clearing your search. Go to, now I'm blanking on that one, classes and enrollment, activity, and 12 attendance hours. And submit. And again, I don't have any students with 12 attendance hours, but for your programs, that should work. How many students are in a bridge course? So that should be classes and enrollment. Select the bridge button, yes. And you shouldn't have to select either of these. And it should give you a list of results. And for my test site, I have 4. And how many students at your program lack a pretest? So that would be under the testing category, and student test lacks pretest, and submit. And again, how many students lacking a pretest? Great, so that was all I had. So I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll have plenty of time to answer questions. So I want to quickly review some additional support that you have available to you. So We have just recently created an online help guide. This is up to date for DAISI 2.0. And if you have any technical questions or you suspect that something might not be working the way that it's supposed to, you can reach out to daisisupport@cate.org. Here's my contact information if you have any specific questions about DAISI or any policy-related questions. I can help with those. And I always direct people to regional support staff. They're super knowledgeable. All of them have a ton of experience in adult education. So I highly recommend reaching out to them if you have any questions as well.